If you're an artist, writer, or creative of any kind, you've likely experienced what's known as a creative block. The feeling's familiar. You want to create something, but you feel stuck. You're frustrated, you're unable to move forward. And what really sucks is that creative block can happen at any stage in your process, in the beginning, during, and even after. And I want to clarify that creative block can also happen for any length of time. It can be a day, a week, even years. In the 7 years that I've been doing this, about 3 to 4 of those years were really ravaged by creative block. And it was kind of like on and off. Some of the periods were short and some of the periods lasted years. I did go through some personal situations where I just had to step away from my art, and some of it was just kind of in my head. Self-sabotage. So I've been in your shoes struggling with creative block. And in this video, I want to share 3 signs that might indicate that you have creative block and 3 ways that you can work on to overcome them. And these are things that I've personally used and hope it can help you. The first sign is that you consume, but you don't create. And consumption can come in 2 different forms. You can either consume content or you might consume supplies or tools. And maybe this is you. You watch countless hours of YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, or maybe you have a growing list of online courses and workshops that you want to take. And all the while, the time to create diminishes into non-existence. Or maybe you like to consume supplies and tools. I get it because I love to have a variety and experiment, but do I always find the time to create with them? Not really. Sign number 2, you find ways to stop yourself. And this is the kind of creative block that happens before you even begin. It's also a sign of procrastination or perfectionism tendencies, or you might be just doubting yourself because the end result might not be really good. And if that's the case, why even bother creating, right? Or maybe your creative space has become a mess and you allow the disorder to distract you and prevent you from creating. The way that you stop yourself is going to look different from person to person, but you have to identify what is stopping you. Is it yourself? Is it your surrounding? And tackle that one at a time. Sign number 3 is that you often feel overwhelmed when it's time to create. And this might be a combination of the first 2 signs. You might be feeling overwhelmed by all the content you still have yet to watch, or feeling overwhelmed that you just have too much stuff and you don't know where to start. There's so much that you don't have room to create or have the room for your inspiration to shine. So what can you do now that you know that you have creative block? Well, here are 3 practices that I do to overcome creative block. The first is overcome with laser focus. Consuming content or supplies in and of itself isn't a bad thing. It can really be helpful. It can really fuel your inspiration. I get it. But if it starts to distract you, that's when you have to stop and laser focus on one thing. So you can dedicate a week or a month, whatever length of time makes sense to you, and choose one thing. Maybe it's a new supply that you got. Maybe it's a new subject that you want to try painting. In 2017, I decided to start a 100-day project, and this is very early on in my business. I decided to do 100 days of watercolor wreaths because I just love wreaths. I went from really simple geometric shapes to really complicated flower arrangements, and I really saw my skills and creativity grow. In 2021, I wanted to focus on a different subject for each month. I started with some subjects that are comfortable for me, like flowers and wreaths, but then I wanted to challenge myself by painting animals like sea creatures, birds, a rabbit, and I even threw in some crystals in there. Maybe you want to laser focus on a supply or tool. You picked up that new paint color. So now let's do a monochromatic study of that, or recreate an old painting and add that splash of the new color. Laser focus on that one thing that you've been consuming because it's time to create. Overcome by practicing mindfulness. This has been a newer development for me over the years. And as I practice the morning pages in the artist state, which I'll talk about in the next point, I realized that I'm actually not very mindful or aware. I'm the type of person that is constantly reliving the past and anxious about the future, and all the while here I am in the present being pulled by 2 different sides and feeling paralyzed. And now that I've practiced mindfulness for a couple years, it doesn't mean that I'm suddenly perfect or enlightened or whatever. I still struggle with it every day. But here are some ways that I practice mindfulness as I'm painting and before I paint. Before and after each painting session, I practice my breathing technique. And while I'm painting, I practice my breathing technique when I'm washing out my brush and then blotting. So while I'm washing it out, I inhale, and while I'm blotting the brush, I exhale. And that just helps me kind of slow down and look at what I'm doing and just pause, because I'm so used to like rushing off to the next activity or wanting to quickly get whatever I'm doing done that I stop to just admire what I'm doing. Next, I check in with my body. I watch my posture, I observe my hands and my wrists as I paint. I also connect with my tools, and as cheesy as it sounds, I really do see my brushes as an extension of my fingers and hands. As I connect, I realize that it's becoming more and more effortless as I paint. All of this I actually discussed in my Skillshare class, 10 Days of Watercolor Mindfulness, so make sure to check that out if you want to learn more, and you can try Skillshare free for 30 days if you use my link below. So if you're struggling with creative block, try practicing mindfulness. Check in with your body, with your tools. Be aware, mindful, and present in the moment that you're painting, even if it's something really simple like circles and lines. Lastly, overcome with the morning pages and the artist state. These two ideas come from Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way, and I highly recommend this for any creative out there. I'll admit there are some days that I forget to do my morning pages, especially on the weekends, and sometimes weeks go by before I do an artist state, but I don't let the inconsistencies distract me or discourage me. I simply just jump right back in and the rhythm continues. So what are morning pages? Morning pages are 3 handwritten pages of streams of consciousness. You do this first thing in the morning and you don't revisit them. They're not journal entries. You write as soon as you think of something. So if your hand starts cramping because you haven't written anything in a while, write that down. In 2020, when I kind of first started this process, my desk was facing a window. And so I would randomly write, oh, I see a cardinal, or, oh, there goes a squirrel again. Really random stuff. But what I found through my morning pages was that the first 3 to 6 months were really hard. And that was also because in my personal life, I was going through a really dark time. And so the stuff that I was writing were just really hard stuff. Thank goodness I don't have to reread them. And as I struggled to relaunch my business in 2020, to restart, rebrand, all of that, I struggled a lot with creative block. So in those 3 to 6 months, all 3 pages were usually just full of, self-doubt, worries, and problems. But over time, 3 pages of all that nonsense became 2 pages, and then 1 page, and then sometimes even half a page. And then the rest of the 3 pages were full of inspiration, joy, excitement, passion, ideas. And that's the power of morning pages. You gotta go through the messy stuff. Your inner critic is always gonna be the loudest, so you gotta pour that out on the pages, and only then will you experience a breakthrough. Now, the artist date is a special time where you take your inner artist out on a date. You can think of your inner artist like your inner child, like Julia Cameron describes, and Julia recommends doing the artist date once a week for a 2-hour time block. Now, if art isn't your full-time thing, I understand that this might be kind of difficult because it's even difficult for me, and I do this full-time. So I do the artist date about once every 2 weeks. And your artist date is going to look different from mine. So think about what your inner artist will be recharged or refueled by. For me, it's going to the Chicago Botanic Garden or the Forest Preserve, taking long walks. I also like to peruse the houseplant section at the local nursery or Home Depot. I like to stop by the craft store and see what's new. I might buy myself a small bouquet of flowers and arrange them and admire their beauty. You don't have to spend the 2 hours creating at all. You can do something that's completely unrelated. All that matters is that you are tending to your inner artist. So now let me check in with you. How are you feeling? You might be feeling a little overwhelmed by all the info that I just shared. And if that's the case, I'm going to encourage you to just kind of pause, think about it, process it. Don't rush off to the next video. Give yourself time to fully process. Because if you're really struggling with creative block, there are things that you can do to help yourself. So take the time to journal about it, think over it, and discuss it with others. Before you go, I'd appreciate a like on this video if you found it helpful. And after you've taken some time to process, please come back and leave a comment about how it's helped you. I appreciate all of your comments. Please subscribe for more content like this, and I'll see you next time.